Russia is not a country built on conquest or luxury. It is a nation carved from cold, war, silence, and belief. To understand why Russians are feared, you must understand what shaped them. Not just history, not just war, but something older, harder, something closer to faith than politics. Begin with the land. Russia stretches from Europe to the Pacific. 11 time zones. Frozen tundra, swamp, steppe, forest, desert. It is both everywhere and nowhere. Too vast to defend, too harsh to farm, too wild to tame. And yet, it was tamed. Only a certain kind of people could survive in that land. People who understood that comfort is an illusion, that life is suffering, that survival is not a right, but a ritual. In the West, history is told through freedom. In Russia, it is told through endurance. When the Mongols came in the 1200s, they didn't just raid, they ruled for 2.5 centuries. They humiliated the Russian princes, taxed the people, and burned the cities. But the Russians didn't die. They watched, they learned, and when they rose up, they were no longer the same. The Muscovite princes had absorbed the ruthlessness of the horde, the centralization, the paranoia, the control. Then came Ivan IV, the first Tsar. Ivan the Terrible did not govern by law. He ruled by fear. His oprichniki rode through towns with severed dogs' heads and brooms, symbols of sniffing out traitors and sweeping them away. Mass executions, torture, madness. He killed his own heir. But the state survived, and so did the people. In Russia, rulers are not questioned. They are endured. Because the people do not believe in the ruler, they believe in survival. And more than that, they believe in something deeper. In the 10th century, Russia converted to Orthodox Christianity. But this was no Western church of compromise or debate. It was a church of candles and icons, fire and awe. The Russian Orthodox soul became something heavy, mystical, tragic, where suffering is sacred, where pain has meaning, where endurance itself is holy. Even today, the Russian concept of dukh, the spirit, the soul, is not about individual joy. It's about standing firm in the storm. To bend is to break. To be silent is to be strong. To suffer is to live rightly. This belief, this spiritual DNA, would be tested more than once. The Tsars fall, the Soviet Union rises, communism promises equality. But in practice, it brings fear. Stalin turns the nation into a furnace, purges, gulags, executions, famine, silence. Millions die. But the idea survives. The Russian soul does not crack. It goes underground. Churches are shut, but people still cross themselves. Icons are hidden in homes. Grandmothers whisper prayers under their breath. Belief doesn't disappear. It hardens. Even without God, the people keep the same rhythm. Sacrifice, struggle, strength. Then comes the war. Hitler invades. Operation Barbarossa. 3 million German troops sweep across the border. Cities fall. But the Russians do not. In Leningrad, people boil leather shoes for soup. In Stalingrad, they fight with knives, bricks, or their bare hands. Factories are rebuilt in the Urals in a matter of weeks. Children build weapons. Soldiers are sent to the front with no rifle, told to take one from the man who falls. It is not madness, it is belief that this land cannot fall, that it must not. By the end, 27 million Soviets are dead, but the red flag flies over Berlin. Russia wins because it refuses to lose. After the war, another kind of silence takes over, the Cold War. The West fears Russia not because of what it sees, but because of what it doesn't. Spies, disinformation, assassinations, the KGB, the gulags, nuclear warheads hidden behind iron curtains. Russian fear is not loud, it's psychological. It's the fear that you cannot break a people who don't need to win in order to survive. A people who have been betrayed by czars, tyrants, and generals, and still keep going. A people who still sing in church choirs after 70 years of enforced atheism. Even today, Russia is not understood. It is underestimated. When the Soviet Union fell, many thought it was over, but it wasn't. Because Russia is not a regime, it is a condition. In Chechnya, it burned whole cities. In Crimea, it took without asking. On the internet, it fights with silence, confusion, and control. Russians don't look to the West for validation. They look to history, to the steppe, to the ancestors who froze, starved, bled, and endured. So why are Russians feared? Because they do not fear death the way others do. Because they have been ruled by monsters and became stronger. Because they believe that pain is part of truth. Because the land taught them to trust no one but themselves. Because they do not expect comfort. They expect winter. And because they believe, deep down, that suffering is not the enemy. It is the proof that they are still alive. The West fears collapse. Russia prepares for it. The West fears isolation. Russia thrives in it. The West fears pain. Russia baptizes in it. You cannot defeat a people who do not need to win. You cannot intimidate a people who see fear as normal. And you cannot destroy a people who believe that even death must be earned. That is why the Russians are feared, because they do not break.